Fiber plays a key role in promoting digestive health. There are two types of fiber, called soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber is found in foods like vegetables and whole grain, and it promotes digestive health because it provides bulk, which in turn promotes regularity. Soluble fiber is found in foods like oats and apples and barley, and this type of fiber traps water and swells up and helps to keep you full. Soluble fibers are also prebiotics. This means that they serve as a food source for the good bacteria in your gut, and these good bacteria are called probiotics. Probiotics are found in fermented foods such as yogurt, kefir, pickles, as well as probiotic supplements. Fluids are also critically important for healthy digestion and elimination. Make sure your diet includes both types of fiber, plenty of fluids, and probiotics from both foods and supplements as part of a healthy, balanced diet.
Hi, this is Dr. Dave Heber. I'm here today with Susan Bowerman.
Hi, everyone.
My dietitian of many, many years. We've had lots of adventures together.
Yes,
We've worked
we have.
together on many things.
Yep.
And she's now a gift to the world to change the nutritional habits of the world, one person at a time. And today we're going to be talking about digestive health issues and probiotics, the microbiome. We're going to be answering some of your questions. It's going to be a really great time together, and it's really fun to be here today.
It is. It's fun to be here with you too, David. And I think that, this is such a great topic because you and I both know from all of our years of clinical work that digestive health is something that comes up all the time, right? Every time we see a patient, you ask them about their digestion, there was always something, right? So why is that? Why and why is this so important for everyone to have good digestive health?
Well, it's absolutely critical because who you are as a person really involves what's going on in your gastrointestinal tract every single day. It reflects what you eat, what you drink, and it has a rhythm of its own. It's 22 feet of small intestine that's kind of moving along, moving your food along, digesting your food on a little surface called villi, a huge surface that has enzymes on it that try to digest the foods that you eat. And depending on what you eat, those enzymes may be different. If you eat a lot of fat or sugar or whatever. In addition to that, you're not alone. These villi are covered with bacteria, and there's trillions of bacteria, not only in your small bowel, but in your large bowel. And what they do is they digest those things that you don't digest in your diet. So what the bacteria do is they support your health, they support your immune function. About 70% of your immune system is around the small intestine, and every single day they go through a rhythm depending on what you eat. They're different when you're asleep, they're different during the day, and it's something that you have a lot of control over, but you have to pay attention to it.
I think that's really amazing. I mean, even though I know this, every time I hear it, and especially when I hear it from you, I think that people really don't realize how much these bacteria are really doing for us and why it's so important to maintain a really healthy balance of bacteria. And it brings up something interesting to me because what you said about when people change their diets, and I remember years ago when I was in practice that if we would make a recommendation, for example, to somebody that they should put more fiber into their diet, and they would come back a week later and say, oh, I'm really suffering and I had so much gas. And so this really explains a lot of it, is that when you make a change in your diet like that, even when you're trying to do something for the better, it takes a little while, right? So what's happening really is that your bacteria are adjusting inside of you, right?
Absolutely. And for what we do every day, when people go on a meal replacement shake, they often have, about 10% of people have some minor digestive issues. So this is one of the most common things that you're going to see. As you're going out to help people with weight management, with meal replacements, you're going to see people who are having digestive issues. Nothing serious. These are all minor, and as you noted, they will be normal over time. The body will adjust. But in that period when you're adjusting, you're going to have some little disruptions. You maybe have a little more gas production, because one of the things bacteria do with fiber is they turn it into gas. They also turn it into small substances called short-chain fatty acids, which circulate through your body, and they even go up to your brain. They can affect your appetite. They have all kinds of functions in the body, and of course, immune functions. So people who eat a meat-based diet, who have no colorful fruits and vegetables have a very different microbiome than people who exercise regularly, drink water every day, and eat lots of colorful fruits and vegetables and whole grains like black beans and brown rice.
Exactly. And I think the other thing is that, which, you know, we were talking about just making changes in the diet. So obviously we're making changes for the better. And I think it's interesting, too, to think about what the bacteria are actually doing for us, because we're talking about bacteria that produce vitamins for us, right? And they're producing other compounds, breaking down some of these things in the foods that we're not able to do, and we reap the benefits, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it turns out that the villi that I talked about, they're actually covered with a type of bacteria called Bacteroides fragilis, which actually occupies the space so that bad bacteria can't get in there. Then your immune system sends up a little periscope, looks around for unfriendly bacteria that you
A real periscope?
Yeah, not a real one. It's like a cell that looks like a periscope, and it figures out, is there a bad bacteria out there? Then it runs back to your immune system, gives it a message and says, you got to come up here and get this guy because he's no good. So it turns out I grew up in the 50s, and you know, if you went to a fast food place in the 50s, you were guaranteed digestive issues. And bad bacteria that maybe weren't kept real clean, maybe the hygiene wasn't so good. First, your stomach acid will try to kill most of the bacteria, but then some of them still would get through. So every fast food counter in a drugstore always had a big bottle of bicarbonate soda that they would empty out, and people would drink these things.
Which really doesn't make sense, because if you're saying the stomach acid is supposed to kill the bacteria, and then you take in something like a soda, which is not acidic, so what was the soda supposed to do?
Well, what it would do is, as soon as it hit your stomach acid, it would produce some gas so you would burp and feel a little bit better. You get kind of a little feedback kind of thing. I think I even had a little submarine that I used to play with in the bathtub where you'd put this bicarb in there and it would skirt around the bathtub. This stuff doesn't help. What really you have to do is be on the right diet and have the right bacteria. So getting the right bacteria into your microbiome, it's a challenge.
It is. Yeah, it definitely is. And I think just bringing up, though, this common thing that people have of belching, we might as well talk about it since we're talking about digestive issues. So one of the reasons that people get gas in their stomach, aside from the fast food burgers you mentioned, is that people swallow air a lot when they eat very quickly, so that can do it. I've heard that there's certain things that you can eat that can also produce stomach gas, right?
Well, that's one, and talking while you're eating, chewing gum, carbonated beverages, all those things work. And there's some people, to get around this, would even, as you know, swallow charcoal to try to absorb the gas rather than eat it the right way.
It's very popular again, actually. People are using activated charcoal supplements. Do they do anything?
Not much, and then they have certain over-the-counter things that have what's called simethicone, which is a chemical that breaks up bubbles to try to do that kind of thing. But you know what? All these people are just dealing with the symptoms, not dealing with the underlying problem. The underlying problem is their diet is not balanced. And they're not eating the right way. They may be eating too fast. They may be eating too much. They may be having a little bit of heartburn or digestion problems where they're having what we call reflux of foods back into the swallowing tube. And so as you approach this thing of using a probiotic, what are the big challenges? Well, probably the most common probiotic you're familiar with is yogurt. Yogurt is full of not all yogurts, by the way. Some yogurts have been sterilized, but there are many yogurts that have lots of what are called lactobacilli, a very healthy type of bacteria. And what it turns out is that those bacteria come in and they have a nice effect on your other bacteria. So one of the problems and the challenges that a bacteria faces coming into the GI tract is they have to get through that stomach acid. And what happens is most bacteria in a typical yogurt will turn out to only 1 out of 1,000 will actually survive the stomach acid. So what we've done at Herbalife is we have a very special strain of bacteria. It's called BC30. The BC stands for something called Bacillus coagulans. It's one of the few bacteria that, while it acts like the lactobacillus that's found in yogurt, what it does is, when you grow it the right way, it forms a little coat around it that allows it to survive and swim through that, or just get pushed through that stomach acid and get out the other side so it can get to where it needs to be. And there are different Bacillus coagulans, or BCs. There's a BC60, a BC90, but a strain of bacteria can be patented, just like a particular color of a rose could be patented. And this one's called BC30 because it flourishes at a temperature above 30 degrees centigrade. So our bodies inside inside are 37 degrees centigrade, or about 98 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's where this thing starts to bloom. So you take it, it gets through your stomach acid, gets into your colon, and there in the nice environment of that soil that you have in your body, it blooms and has a beneficial effect on the other bacteria. And there are clinical studies that show a beneficial effect on this common thing that we call irritable bowel syndrome, but it's really just common digestive problems.
Well, and so this is also interesting to me too, because we talk a lot about eating probiotic foods. And we talk about supplements as well, because that can really help to rebalance the bacteria. But it makes me wonder when you're talking about probiotics just in foods, because we talk about, for example, fermented foods, which are good sources of probiotics. So yogurt is fermented, tempeh, which is a fermented tofu that has a lot of probiotics in it, natural sauerkrauts and pickles and things like that. So when we eat those foods, are those good bacteria actually surviving our digestive systems? I mean, people have eaten them traditionally for years for that reason, so I would presume they do.
Yeah, and another one is kimchi, of course, very popular in Korea. And these bacteria are not found in all versions of these foods. As you know, some of them are sterilized in processing, so you have to check to make sure you have the right kind of sauerkraut, and the right kind of pickles.
Right.
But if you have those, only about 1 out of 1,000 bacteria gets down there. And since there are millions of bacteria in some of these foods, some does get down there and does help. But it's a very inefficient process.
You have to eat a lot of it.
And it's inefficient for yogurt as well.
Okay. So we've got some questions, which is great. We love answering questions from people. So here's a question from Ashley. She says, what are your suggestions for healthy digestion for people who struggle to meet their daily fiber needs? It's a great question.
Well, we've talked about this many times, as you know, in some of our books. And what I basically suggest to people is to take a fiber supplement. We have a target of about 25 or 30 grams of fiber that you need every day. Many vegetables and fruits will have 5 grams per serving. We've actually got lists of those in some of the books that Susan and I have written. And you can also take fiber supplements. We have some wonderful fiber supplements. Herbalife's Active Fiber has that. And fibers are actually what we call prebiotic.
That's right.
That is, a prebiotic feeds the bacteria and helps it to grow. A probiotic is a live bacteria that lives in your colon once you take it into your body, as we talked about with yogurt or sauerkraut or with the BC30 probiotic supplement. So that's how you really get to that point.
Yeah, and that's great, because I think fiber is one of those things that for a lot of people it is hard, and we do say, eat more vegetables, eat more fruits, eat more whole grains, eat more beans, and people work on that. But it's surprising, trying to get up to that, say, 30-gram range really can be kind of challenging without a supplement. It really means that you need to eat a fruit and vegetable at every meal, which is something that I often recommend. You have to really look at your food labels, but even then, it can be a little bit of a challenge. Now, one of the things you just said, and we should explore this a little bit more, you touched on this. We got another question from Jose, who says, what's the difference between probiotics and fiber, and can they be used at the same time? So I think what he's asking is, we've got fiber, which is a probiotic, but there's a prebiotic. So if you're using fiber as a prebiotic and you're getting the probiotics either from your fermented foods or getting it from a supplement, they're different. Do they work together? Should we be taking them at the same time?
Well, I think you should be taking them at the same time, because basically the diet you eat is in essence a prebiotic. We've just done some research in our laboratory to show that spices are prebiotic. Also, the phytonutrients, that's a word we use for all the healthful substances in fruits and vegetables, those are also prebiotic. So we know that what you eat affects how your bacteria grow. As they digest it, let's say bacteria A really likes what you had and bacteria B doesn't like it so much. Well, bacteria A is going to eat a lot of it and it's going to multiply. Bacteria B is not going to participate. Now, if you change your diet around, all of a sudden bacteria B likes it better. It's going to grow a lot and bacteria A is going to go down. So this population is constantly changing to how it interacts with your diet. So as you eat different foods, fruits and vegetables, fibers, meat products, all those things affect your microbiome. And what a supplement can do is to regularize that a little bit by putting a population of bacteria in there that are going to successfully compete with the other bacteria and have beneficial effects.
That's great. And I think also just another point on fiber is there's 2 different types of fiber, and sometimes people aren't really aware of that. So we have our soluble fibers, and these are the things I always say to people. If you think about what happens when you cook oatmeal, and you put it in water and it gets soft and it gets gluey, and what you're actually seeing there is the fiber is dissolving in the water. Or when you open a can of beans and the liquid is very thick, it's because the fiber that's in there is soluble. And that's different from the insoluble fibers, which are really more in the structural parts of plants. So if you think about a really woody carrot or the brown rice we have here on the table, these are the more insoluble. And they work differently in your system. We need both, right?
Right. Yeah, the insoluble fibers help your GI tract move along. So think about your GI tract as like one of those collapsible garden hoses that you would use in the yard. And what you want to do is the fiber will make it swell a little bit. So as it moves through that 22 feet of intestine, the insoluble fiber helps move your digestive material along. On the other hand, the soluble fiber, a lot of it gets eaten by the bacteria. Some gas can be produced from soluble fibers, and soluble fibers have other functions. They bind cholesterol in your intestine and other fats and take them out of your body. So they participate in your overall physiology. So you see, you're really not alone. You're really not a machine. You're interacting with your bacteria at all times throughout the day.
So we need both types of fiber. And I think one thing that's also really important talking about digestive health, and we haven't touched on this yet, is hydration. Because if you're talking about a fiber that needs to swell, it needs fluid in order to do that, right?
Absolutely. You know, people who don't drink have a lot of problems where their GI tract just doesn't move. So it's wonderful to have the fibers, it's wonderful to have these other things, but if you're eating foods that don't have a lot of water in them, you're not going to move those intestinal contents along. So it's important, I know you always talk about this, that coffee and tea do count.
They do.
As well as water, and many fruits and vegetables have lots of water in them. People who eat a lot of processed foods, say candy bars and cookies and things that don't have water in them, they can end up really being kind of stuck where the foods in their intestines are not moving along, and they'll have a lot of stomach pain, and this is a very, very common problem. We always recommend 6 to 8 cups of water or other fluid every single day.
That's right. So Jasmine's still not clear on the difference between prebiotics and probiotics. So she says, can you tell us more about the difference? So
okay. So basically, it's confusing because they both got biotic at the end. So
I mixed it up.
That's right. Yeah. One is pre and one is pro. Okay, so what is a prebiotic? A prebiotic is something that feeds the bacteria.
Which is the probiotic.
Which is the probiotic. The bacteria is the probiotic. What feeds it is the prebiotic. So you can think of it that the soil is made up of a lot of bacteria. You put a fertilizer in the soil, or you put some other chemical in the soil, or you put some compost in the soil, that will feed the bacteria and change the soil bacteria. The soil bacteria themselves, that is the probiotic. If you were to, say, take some bacteria and throw them into that soil, that would be a probiotic. The prebiotic is what you're putting into the soil to help stimulate healthy bacterial growth.
Okay, I don't think anybody could have put it more clearly than that. So I think, so thank you for that. No, because that's one of the more difficult concepts.
Sure.
And I think that people sometimes confuse the terms, but also it gets back to that question that Jose had, which is, should we be taking them both? Should we take them at the same time? Does it matter when we take them? If we're going to take supplements, should we take them with food? Should we take them in between? Does it make a difference?
Well, your food should be your prebiotic.
Of course.
So your food should have the fiber you need. It should have the phytonutrients. It should have the spices. It should have all the healthy elements that are supporting healthy bacteria. Because we know one thing. If we look at the bacteria in somebody eating a healthy diet versus an unhealthy diet, the bacteria are different. So what you really need to do is eat a healthy diet to start with. If you need a fiber supplement, put a fiber supplement in there. That's all prebiotic. In terms of probiotic, you have your probiotic. By the way, you have to have it every single day. And the reason why is these bacteria are excreted from your body every day, so you need to replenish the bacteria that are in the probiotic every single day. And you take that probiotic in addition to eating a healthy diet, exercising every day, which helps with intestinal motility, and drinking the proper amount of water.
Great, great. And here's a really good question, too. It's summertime and people are traveling a lot. And we've experienced this as we talk to patients in our practices. Question from Tracy. She says, I'm planning a trip. What can I do to prepare my stomach? And, this is such a common thing that people run into all the time when they travel, because not only, obviously, you have a change in diet, you don't have your usual foods, you're not eating your usual, dietary pattern every day. if you're traveling across time zones, your system is getting disrupted, so you've got that to deal with. And just, everything really is different. And so when all of these factors in to what's happening with your digestive system when you travel, it's pretty easy to get a digestive upset when you travel. So we should talk a little bit more about this. So we've got changes in time zones, we've got changes in diet, we've got probably, you've got stress, right? Because travel, as much as we go for relaxation, can be stressful. So all of those things can really affect just our overall digestive health as well.
Well, the amazing thing is that actually your brain is connected to your gut. We have a gut-brain connection. So 90% of the nerves between the brain and your gut are going from the gut to your brain to tell you what you're eating. And your brain itself is on a diurnal rhythm, so a 24-hour rhythm. So the light that comes into your eyes sets up a biological rhythm in your entire body. We have internal clocks. And it turns out that when you travel from west to east, so if I go from Los Angeles to New York, or even further going east, that's very disruptive to our bodies. Going west is a lot easier. So how do I handle that? Because I do a lot of travel, obviously, all over the world. What I do is when you try to stay on your home clock, so that when I'm going east, I will get someplace. I'm going to be pretty tired. I'm probably going to take a nap for 3 or 4 hours and get back on my usual rhythm. If I'm going west, say I'm going to Japan from Los Angeles, I will try to stay up, and when I get there, I will sleep several hours after I get to Japan. On the way back from Japan, I will get on the airplane and I'll say, you know what, I don't want any food, I'm going to sleep right away. I go to sleep and I sleep on my way back. I get up here and it's morning again. Now my GI tract is totally normal. Now what does stress do? Stress is the worst thing. People that are trying to cram for a final exam and they're staying up all night, or if you're nervous about something, people say, I have butterflies in my stomach. What they're talking about is this effect of the brain on the GI tract. So, anytime you have tremendous stress or you're panicky, you're going to affect your digestion. Your digestion may stop or it may go really quickly. So your brain is connected to your GI tract, your stress, and the time zones that you're in. Keeping your biological clock working normally is very, very important.
Yeah, it's really, it's really challenging, but I think part of it is that we talked about some of this stuff already, is that, probably taking a probiotic supplement, pardon me, before you go. And, making sure that your system is in tip-top shape before you leave. So just keeping up with that every day. Keeping up with hydration. People don't realize, for example, when they are on an airplane, we say you should drink a cup of fluid for every hour you're in the air. And a lot of people don't do that. Maybe they're in a window seat and they don't want to disturb everybody by having to get up and use the restroom. But it's really important because the air is so dry. And clearly, if you're not getting the fluids, I'm so sorry. If you're not getting the fluids that you need, which apparently I need, if you're not getting that, then your system's going to get disrupted. What I also tell people, too, when they're traveling is try to stay pretty much within your dietary pattern as much as you can. So, for example, if your breakfast in the morning is usually a shake, then take those products with you if you can so that you can make them in your hotel room. If your lunch is typically, a protein and some vegetables, and you just switch gears completely and eat something that's really off your plan, you might want to do that just because you're traveling and you want to try new foods, but recognize that you might experience a little bit of upset, right? And your system's going to take a little bit of time to adjust.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think the important thing that we need to realize is you have to take this probiotic every single day. So as we think about you as a person, this microbiome stuff is not just another supplement. This is about who you are as a person. So if we define you as a person, number one, your genes that you inherited. You can't pick your parents, so you have a certain set of genes. But those genes turn on and off every day. About 40% of the genes in your body turn on and off depending on your metabolism and what you're eating. And the other thing is 100 times more genetic material exists in the bacteria that are in and on your body. That's what the microbiome is really about, is your genetics, the bacterial genetics, and then your diet and lifestyle. Just think of it as a triangle where all three things are working together. That now defines you as a whole person. So you need to think about your diet and lifestyle. You need to think about your microbiome every single day. You can't really change your genetic blueprint, but you can change how those genes work in your body with the other two parts of the triangle, which are diet and lifestyle and microbiome. So this is changing nutrition science. It's changing how we understand our bodies, and we have to now incorporate that into how we behave with balanced nutrition and a healthy, active lifestyle every day that is personalized.
You know, before we get to the next question, I'd like you to expand on that a little bit, because I think, you know, when we think of the microbiome, when people hear about it, we think of it in terms of digestive health, but there's a lot of other effects that it has on us as well, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that the microbiome produces vitamins. Vitamin K in particular, is about half of it is produced from the bacteria in your gut. There are other things that the bacteria do, such as producing these short-chain fatty acids, which are important for metabolism. They interact with your gallbladder in terms of absorptions of fat. And so what happens is your entire body considers the presence of these bacteria. And what's really amazing is we didn't know anything about this until about 15 years ago. It's really true. This is the most cutting-edge, leading area of nutrition science right now. Any nutrition conference you go to anywhere in the world today, they're going to be talking about the microbiome. So this is something, again, where Herbalife is at the leading edge of science and trying to apply it to better health for people around the world.
And even this gut-brain connection, really, there is some influence on mood as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. You know, there's now a lot of emerging science on the gut-brain connection. And while some of it is not, you know, fully developed yet, it's very clear that what you eat affects your brain, and vice versa. Psychological things can then affect your diet. So again, it's an interaction. It's a two-way interaction between your stress, your lifestyle. Exercise, for example, I call it the only healthy addiction, because exercise really puts you in a great shape for your day. That's why we stress so much healthy, active lifestyle and protein. You know, the intestine is made of cells. Those cells turn over very quickly. We were talking about the villi. Those villi cells turn over every 6 hours. And people who have a geographic tongue, where you see a little map of South America on their tongue, it changes its pattern every 6 hours. So these cells need a lot of protein. They need the proper amount of protein to be healthy and to be able to interact with their healthy bacteria. So everything we teach you about nutrition in Herbalife, it all fits together. You can't just do one thing and expect it to be a magic bullet.
And I think people also, you know, we talk about, for example, how important activity is for regularity. And it's just such a simple, almost mechanical process that as you're exercising your skeletal muscles, the ones on the, you know, on the surface of your body, those are actually sort of massaging those smooth muscles within your digestive tract, and those really do help to keep the material moving through. And that's one of the reasons that exercise is so important. So as you're exercising, this brings to our next question. Rosa wants to know, how much water should you drink per day? We talked about this a little bit, but I want to revisit this question because it comes up a lot, because you may have had people say this to you. I've had people say to me, I don't like water. I don't like plain water. And, you know, so when we say water, people think, well, is that water on top of all the other things that I'm drinking, or does it really include all the other fluids? So I always say water counts, mineral water counts, tea counts. Coffee counts, particularly for people who are regular coffee drinkers. So the idea that coffee is sort of a fluid negative really isn't true. If you're not a habitual coffee drinker, you may have a little bit more fluid loss, but most people it's not a problem. So that counts. And for those people who don't like to drink plain water, I say, well, try tea, or put maybe a little splash of fruit juice or a chunk of fresh fruit or something, or a piece of cucumber. Make your own spa water at home. I do that all the time because I'm one of those people who really doesn't love plain water. I like a little flavor, and those things seem to work. So as long as all of those taken together, you're getting about 8 glasses, that'll work.
Well, you know, it's also important to have fluids while you're exercising. So we recommend that when you're thirsty, when you're exercising, your thirst is your best guide to how much water you should be taking when you exercise. And when you talk about the impact of exercise on the gastrointestinal function, I laughed to myself a little bit because I had a patient once who every night at dinner would have horrible stomach pains. And what we worked out was that person would take a nice leisurely walk after dinner, and all the symptoms disappeared.
It's amazing.
Because they relaxed, their stress went away, they had a nice conversation while they were walking. So a walk after dinner is a great prescription for getting the GI tract moving. And so again, all these things fit together: the exercise, the fluids, the relaxation. It's all a holistic package.
Yeah, it's perfect. So we've got one last question from Debbie. She wants to know is if we're going to take a prebiotic, the fiber, or a probiotic, should we take it before a meal, after a meal? Does it matter if we're going to use a supplement?
Well, it doesn't really matter in terms of the probiotic when you take it. Just make sure you take it every single day, probably around the same time. The prebiotic is your food.
Yeah.
So I think for fiber, you want to maybe mix it into your food. We've talked about adding fiber to cereal and stuff like that. Yep. You want to have your beans and your whole grain rice, and a prebiotic. If you need a fiber supplement, go ahead and take that fiber supplement. Probably a lot of people put it in their shake, and it helps them fill up a little bit at the same time. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. The body will work. While we're confused about prebiotic and probiotic, the body knows how to tell the difference.
That's right, and it's pretty much handled, able to handle pretty much anything that comes its way.
That's right. They can walk and chew gum at the same time, so it's not a problem.
And in terms of fiber, getting back to one of the things we talked about at the beginning, so if people are not eating much fiber, and let's say they're trying to get more in their diet and they start adding a supplement, is there sort of a protocol for doing that? I always just said just sort of gradually increase it, and that seemed to work, and that was enough.
I think that's right. I think, if you're going to work your way up to a tablespoon of fiber supplements, start with a half a tablespoon or a quarter tablespoon if you're very sensitive. With the probiotic, you don't have to do anything. Just take the dose as directed. Those bacteria will get in there, and they'll fight it out with the other bacteria and have a beneficial effect, because these guys are pretty hardy. Yeah,
and I think that your suggestion of doing it at the same time, because to me, something like that, it's like brushing your teeth, so, things that I have to remember to do every day, I just put them by my toothbrush, and then I can never forget. So I think this is great. This has been an amazing discussion. I always learn something when I talk to you after all these years, and it's always so much fun to do this. So I think just, my final thoughts, and then to you, are just, keep in mind that these issues that we're talking about, digestive health issues, are really, really common. And I think that, as we've talked about, just changes in diet, changes in lifestyle, changes in how much fluid you eat, staying active, all of these things are so important for digestive health. And if you have additional questions, please just leave them for us, and we'll do our best to answer them. And also that this Facebook Live, even though we're live now, you can go back and watch.
Oh, yeah, that's great. This has been a great discussion. And what I would like to say, too, is that, a lot of us focus on what's going on the outside of our bodies. Are our muscles rippling? Have we got a six-pack or whatever? Think a little bit about your inner health. What's going on inside your body? Because right here in the middle, this is why the abdominal fat is such a risk factor for so many diseases, is because your small intestine has your immune system, and it creates inflammation. So take good care of your gut, and it'll take good care of you.
Thanks, everyone.